Oh my gosh, Tyra doesn't care. It's not even funny, but it is because I watched 3 hours of this woman basically kind of like my girl. She was acting like she was hosting Dancing with the Stars or something. Like it felt so performative. She doesn't care. She doesn't care that she ruined some of these women's lives, or she hindered their lives, or she put them through trauma. People like Tyra Banks, and it wasn't just Tyra, by the way. Everybody else on this show was complicit, and what's his name, Ken. Yeah, Tyra doesn't care, but there's a difference. I think the way some of the other men approach, the Jays and what's his name, Nigel, approached it was kind of like, okay, yeah, we did go too far, or I wasn't comfortable with this, or this and that. Da, 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 da. But then I'm like, you guys were active participants at the time, and I know that it was the early 2000s and stuff like that. But all of you lot were grown adults. All of you that were grown adults, you guys knew better. But anyway, let's just leave and pivot. Now, people might not agree with what I'm saying now. I completely understand all of the gripes, all of the issues, the concerns, the trauma the women that were on the show went through, you know. However, as Tyra said, as them say, this was a reflection of the times. This was not even the worst type of reality show of people getting like extreme makeovers. There was a show, Extreme Makeovers, where they would be getting like multiple plastic surgeries in for one episode just to look attractive. Biggest Losers. We've even had a documentary recently about Biggest Loser and how that was toxic. There was so much wild things on reality, especially reality TV at that time in the early 2000s, the 2000s was a wild time for reality TV. And at the time, obviously, I'm watching it as a teenager. Um, but obviously, watching it as an adult, you do see things that, like, no, this would not have run in this current era. But at the same time, when you're watching something from 2000 or whenever year it launched, you can't look at it as you can't look at it like that. Like, I was there when I was alive and like grown, well, not grown, but I remember this show and we loved it. We were here for it. The children and adults alike. It was such a big show, and I enjoyed it. I'm not saying it was right. I'm not saying what the women were saying. It didn't happen to them. I watched it happen to them, and now I've got more context behind it and stuff like that. But in 10, 20 years time, we're gonna have a documentary about Love Is Blind, about Love Island. I mean, we already, I think, have we had a documentary about Love Island? But people have taken their lives that have been contestants of Love Island. Reality TV can, I'm not saying it's right. I'm not condoning anything that happened to these women or what they went through, X, Y, and Z. However, I also have to remember I'm not watching. I watched it as Esther, early teenager. Early teenager, late teenager. I'm not watching it as Esther the adult. So it's one of those things that the younger generation are binge watched it during COVID and they're not happy with what they're seeing, and rightfully so. But I remember I watched what's that show called again? Is it Eddie Murphy Raw? Is Raw or no, Delirious is the one that he is wearing the red leather suit, right? Or red leather outfit. I remember, or was that Raw? But it doesn't matter. I remember he was talking. I remember we watching that. I think it was during the pandemic, and the first like 10 minutes or so, or first of his set, he starts talking about HIV, AIDS, gay people, all that stuff, and it made me feel uncomfortable. But again, I'm not saying it was obviously the gay people weren't laughing, the people that had the illness weren't laughing. However, it was acceptable then to make jokes like that. That would not run now. The way he did it, it wouldn't run now. But I have to remember that this is a special that was aired in the early mid 80s. I wasn't even born then, so you know sometimes you have to, when you're watching something from the past, you have to take into account the cultural, the society, the cultural context of what's going on. It's not that doesn't excuse it, but it's kind of like, I will say though, I heard my girl say season 20, cycle 25 or 24, one of them things. And I was like, what? You guys are making this show again. Or Tyra, you're making the show again. And I want to say, anyone that goes on reality TV in 2026, a show like this, a show like Love Island, a show like Big Brother, a show like even Drag Race, okay? Very toxic shows, very toxic environment. I don't want to hear, oh, production, the edit, X, Y, and Z. We have now reached an era now that reality TV has been on for a good quarter of a decade, like even more than that. We know, we know how it is. So if you want to still be a contestant on this type of show, I don't want to see you 20 years time coming to complain. And the girls that were talking about their experiences now, they were young. The reality TV wasn't as established as it is now. You know, some of them wanted to, get out of their situation. Some of them were really desperate. They wanted to change their lives. They really wanted to be models, and they were exploited. You know. But now, if you're going on that type of show, please be aware of, these are the things that happen. Now, I'm sure this time it's going to be better because of the backlash. But let me tell you, if the backlash didn't come, they would not have produced the same type of show. So I think people need to be careful about going on TV in general, but especially reality TV. Ultimately, the producers, the editors, the judges, whatever, they're the ones that have control over how you come across. And if you don't want other people to have control over your image and your likeness and X, Y, and Z, you got to weigh up, is it worth it to be famous for maybe 10, 15 minutes and then, but yeah, Tyra don't care.